Okay. Well,
Uh,
now
but
there are a few people with a time restriction. We can begin with the preamble, right? Welcome everyone to the October 28th Landmarks Commission meeting. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conduct their meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during this meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you keep your microphone muted and use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or the facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. We will be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via our website and email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comment on a particular matter. We'd like to begin today by calling our public hearing to order. I'd like to ask staff to summarize the history and significance of the property.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to remind the commission that we are holding this public hearing today according to Chapter 161.04 of the Landmarks Ordinance. We're not taking action today. We're only here to take testimony. Any action will be taken at the next meeting. The property, the Norfolk Southern Bridge over Lake Avenue was nominated by the commission on July 8th of 2021. We determined that it met 7 of our 10 criteria for landmark designation, including its eligibility for the National Register of Historic Places, that it exemplifies the cultural, economic, social, or historic heritage of the city, that it's identified with the work of a master architect, and that it embodies elements of architectural design, detail, materials, or craftsmanship, which represent a significant architectural innovation. We sent a letter to the owner on August 17th, seeking consent. That was also resent on September 2nd. We received a response from the owner of the property, Norfolk Southern, declining the nomination on September 24th. We sent them a letter notifying them of the public hearing today on October 4th, and public notice was published in the Plain Dealer and on cleveland.com on October 23rd. Thank you, Madam Chair. Julie, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you. I was muted. We'd like to now open the floor for public testimony for those or from those who are speaking on behalf of the nomination. So as I think Don said it, this is not going to be, this is a public hearing only to hear people who either are for or against this nomination. There will not be a vote taken today. So I'd like to open up the floor for anyone who'd like to speak on behalf of the nomination. If you are here to speak on behalf, if you could use the raised hand function so that we can acknowledge you and allow you to speak. Ms. Spencer, Councilman Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to speak, but I would first like to yield. I know there are a couple of others who prepared a presentation. I would like them to provide testimony first, if that's okay, and then I would appreciate an opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. Mr. Wazell?
He's Mr. Wells, you are for or against?
We are
nomination?
against, yeah. I just raised my hand for the appropriate time.
Yeah, I would. Okay, hang on. I think Miss Hudson has been trying to raise her hand, but it keeps going up and down.
Okay, so Mr. Wazell, if you don't mind until we transition to people that are against the nomination, we would appreciate it. So we can move on to Miss Hudson.
Yeah, sorry, I was having a little trouble figuring out if my hand was up or down. So I wanted to add a couple things about the history of the bridge. You might have seen from the photos that before the Lake Avenue Bridge was constructed in 1912, dangerous tunnels occupied the site until a neighborhood uproar convinced the city and the railroad to build something more suitable for the entrance to Edgewater Park. And in 2018, we came full circle. A group of neighbors, we call ourselves the Friends of Lake Avenue Bridge. We began holding cleanups and advocating for the railroad to make necessary repairs to the bridge, including correcting its failing drainage system and preventing concrete from falling from up above onto those passing beneath the bridge. You know, the bridge is eligible for as Mr. Pettit mentioned, for many reasons, including its architectural significance and the importance of Frederick Strebinger, the architect who designed it. It's also important because it is a testament to a key period in the early 20th century in the city of Cleveland. There was a great collaboration between city engineers and railroads in order to replace a number of grade crossings around the city. And this is one of those crossings. It wasn't a grade crossing, but that collaboration was key to the cast iron encasement that is what makes up the historical components of the bridge. The railroad agreed that since this was at the entrance to the city park, that the additional expense was warranted, while you know, someplace that wasn't in such a significant location might not warrant the same expenditure for decoration. Unfortunately, this part of the story has not come full circle because instead of collaborating with the city in order to make these necessary repairs, the railroad is instead choosing to allow its property to deteriorate in the public realm. In this case, directly between my neighborhood and one of the region's most important assets, Edgewater Park.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Is that at the end of your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure that I wasn't moving on before you're complete. Are there other people here to speak on behalf of the nomination before we transition to Ms. Spencer? Ms. LaPlacchia?
Yeah, I can just chime in to second everything Nikki said. She and I helped write the Cleveland Landmark nomination together. And this really is a wonderful architectural asset in Cleveland, one of several of Stribinger's works that are still extant in the city. And it really is remarkable in that it kind of checks all of the boxes for historical significance, be it the architect, the still beautiful architectural elements, and then also its importance to this moment of cultural kind of Beaux-Art flourishing of architecture and collaboration between people working on Cleveland's infrastructure from both the private and public sector. So anyway, I would just want to reiterate everything she said, and I'm happy to answer more questions about the history should they come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaPlachia. Councilman Spencer, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would like to thank Julia LaPlaca and Nikki Hudson for providing testimony today. When this bridge was first introduced for local landmark status, there was a really compelling presentation, and this is the next step after that initial process. And goes without saying that there is historic significance to this bridge. I would like to make some comments as follows. The city of Cleveland has every right to landmark this structure. We can and we should do so. Beyond the historic merits of the bridge itself, of the very structure, which you have heard about, and about its concerning and dangerous state of disrepair, which amounts to demolition by neglect by Norfolk Southern. I do also want to note the importance of surrounding historic context and how Norfolk Southern's negligence is taking away from what we as a community are trying to accomplish. The public sector has been doing its part to improve our neighborhoods, improve Edgewater Park, and it is time for Norfolk Southern to step up and accept its responsibility in preserving this historic structure at this point in time. So I'd like to share a little bit about the important context here. As Ms. Hudson mentioned, this has always been a historic gateway to Edgewater Park. It remains so to this day. So Edgewater Park, for those who might not be local here in Cleveland, is absolutely the crown jewel of not only our city, but our region. You have significant pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular traffic that passes under this bridge daily to reach Edgewater Park. This is a gateway to both to Edgewater Park and to a residential neighborhood and the Gordon Square Arts District. So you're bookended on one side by Edgewater Park, by historic Edgewater Park, and on the other side, the primary basis of the success of the entire surrounding area is rooted in historic preservation. Most notably, the only reason that the Gordon Square Arts District has been successful is because of its historic fabric that has avoided demolition after careful community stewardship. So this is the missing piece in the puzzle. So I think that the argument has been set forth and carefully made about why this structure on its merits, regardless of its location, is deserving of historic preservation and landmark status. But I think when you embed that in the surrounding context, it is much more, even more compelling. So I will conclude with a couple of comments about how the public sector has been doing everything within its power to invest in the surrounding area and preserve this part of Cleveland. So as many of you know, the Ohio Department of Transportation invested $95 million in the Lakefront West and Cleveland Lakefront Bikeway, which transformed the Shoreway into a boulevard. This is literally steps away from this bridge, a $95 million investment in 2013. The Gordon Square Arts District is a $30 million investment and counting. City of Cleveland's Clifton Boulevard improvements in 2016 were a $49 million investment, again, to make that a boulevard and to add transit enhancements and really increase the historic character of Clifton Boulevard. Cleveland Metro Parks has invested $8.5 million in Edgewater Park and counting. The Lake Avenue Bridge improvements themselves, my predecessor on Cleveland City Council, Councilman Matt Zone, did everything he could on the parts of the property that are not owned by Norfolk Southern, including the wing walls, to paint them, add landscaping, add drainage, to add lighting, which has been completely deteriorated because of runoff, mud and moisture runoff from underneath the bridge, the lack of moisture barrier that continues to make the pedestrian experience going under the bridge very, very dangerous, very slick surface because of the structure of the bridge and the drainage system is not where it needs to be. It is not intact and not safe. That was $150,000 that my predecessor allocated towards the bridge. And we have an active project underway as we speak, which is the City of Cleveland Lake Avenue improvements that literally go underneath this bridge, including new pedestrian and bicycle amenities, new medians, planter beds. That's a $3.6 million investment. So all told, we're talking about over $200 million in public investment in the immediate area. So much of it rooted in the historic character and the pride we take in this being the gateway to Edgewater Park and the gateway to the Cadell neighborhood and the Gordon Square Arts District. This is the missing piece. The City of Cleveland does not have jurisdiction directly over Norfolk Southern's property. We have been corresponding with Norfolk Southern for years. We have asked them to improve and stabilize this bridge. And we must use this leverage that we have. The city has a right to preserve this historic structure. If it is not landmarked, then what has been happening to date will continue, which is that Norfolk Southern will address safety concerns on the bridge by literally peeling away the historic elements. And it's a slow process of demolition, of neglect of this historic structure. So that is what has been happening to date. And I beseech and I implore the City of Cleveland Landmarks Commission to protect this structure and to protect all of the surrounding investment and care going into our historic neighborhoods by landmarking this bridge.
Thank you, Councilman Spencer. Are there others that are here to speak on behalf of the nomination? Okay. Not seeing anyone else using the raise hand function to speak on behalf. We will transition to public testimony for those opposed to the nomination. Mr. Wazell?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I do have to tell you that Cleveland will always be near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time there with my son who had a brain tumor. And so we spent a lot of time there in Cleveland Clinic, and the people there are great. The hospital's great. And like I said, Cleveland will always have a spot in my heart. I have to say, Norfolk Southern understands and appreciates that the Cleveland Landmark Commission has selected the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railroad Bridge over Lake Avenue for potential designation as a Cleveland landmark because of its importance to the heritage of the community. NS would not be opposed to this designation if it weren't associated with review, oversight, permitting requirements of the commission. These are actions that we feel would interfere with Norfolk Southern's inspection, maintenance, and repair of its bridge. Lastly, what I must say is the designation itself does not cause concern for us, as we feel the oversight and the permitting are preempted by federal law. And that's the end of my statements.
Thank you, Mr. Wazell. Are there others who are here to speak opposed to the nomination? Ms. Kersey? Oh, I'm sorry, your hand went up and down. Did I catch your name? Did I pronounce it correctly?
I apologize, Madam Chair. That was a mistake on my part.
Okay. Went up and down very quickly. So are there others here that are opposed to the nomination? Okay, not seeing anyone else use the raise hand function to be opposed, we will adjourn and close the public hearing for today. And we will move on to our we'd like to call the Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Pettit, could you please call roll call?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson,
Here.
Ms. Bailey,
Here.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Here.
Mr. Colicchia,
Here.
Director Collier, Mr. Dryer, Councilman Jones, Mr. Santora,
Here.
Mr. Strickland,
Here.
Mr. Tarasik,
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
And Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We'll begin with our public hearing action related to the Slovenian workers' home in World War II war monument. Would staff like to tell us about this project?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We held a public hearing 2 weeks ago on October 14th, and it was requested that we have a meeting with the ownership and the councilman and the CDC to talk about the designation. That meeting happened, I think, late last week. We met with the owner. We met with his representative from Hannah Real Estate. We also met with Peggy Kersey from the Development Corporation, Councilman Polensik, and we talked about all the elements of the designation and how it might impact the property. I think it was very productive. I think we made some progress. Staff has agreed to separate out the war memorial from the designation. We're confident that the ownership and the councilman will find a solution for that monument in the neighborhood in a better setting, probably in Veterans Memorial Park, which is not far away from the site. We've also restricted the designation to the single parcel that the building sits on. I think the ownership is much more amenable to the designation now. I'll let them speak for themselves, but it seems like we've come to some level of agreement. There are still some issues with the building and the tenant, but I think we've made some progress, and I'll let the ownership talk and supplement everything I just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Would someone like to speak on behalf of ownership?
Hi, Patrick Hawkins. I'm sorry I don't have that hands up function available on my screen, so I have to do this the old-fashioned way. Is my audio clear?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yes, I would agree with staff's comment. We had a very productive meeting a week ago last Thursday to discuss the designation. Again, I would reiterate that my intent with the property was always one of preservation and to be able to honor the history of the building and display that. I think staff also I've shown some of the artifacts we've kept in the building itself. So we are enthusiastic about moving forward to the designation for the hall. The memorial, again, we feel we have a solution. I've got a veterans group that looks like they would be eager for this to be donated into their care to remove it from the parking lot, which is really, we don't feel is an appropriate spot for it. And the potential to move it to Veterans Park in the neighborhood would be just, I think, a wonderful win-win for the entire project. So That said, again, we would be enthusiastic about moving forward to get the hall designated as a landmark and continue with the original intention, which is to preserve and restore that facility, and then get the war memorial into an appropriate spot in the neighborhood. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you for that feedback, Mr. Hawkins. We appreciate it. Ms. Kersey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I was at the meeting as per Don Pettit, and the CDC stands in support of being able to take the monument out and just do the Slovenian Workers' Home parcel at this time. We will continue to work with Mr. Hawkins around concerns that he has, other concerns that he has about the building and the other parcels, and we will work with himself, any party that we can through veterans organizations. One of the veterans on my staff right now is looking at other ways to help facilitate, get this monument moved to Veterans Park or another similar situation, because where it is right now does not really does not showcase it, nor is it beneficial for the monument in the middle of a parking lot where it's used as a bumper stop for cars. So we stand in support of all of this work, and we'll continue to work with the city and Mr. Hawkins on this as we move forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that feedback, Ms. Kersey. Mr. Brunges?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out, just for clarification, what would be designated. You can see here at the center, we've removed this parcel here. It would be sublots 1 through 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is now what would be the designated parcel, which would eliminate this, which is now parking lot as well.
Thank you for that clarification. That was helpful. I was going to ask that question. Other people to speak on behalf of the nomination? Okay, then I will open the floor to the commission for questions and comments, and then we will be making a recommendation on this, correct? Don?
That's correct. We will be voting either to proceed or not with the designation.
Perfect. Okay. So I'd like to open the floor for the commission for questions and comments. Questions and comments from the commission? I will begin. I think this is a, obviously by the outcry of the community and the feedback from the CDC and the ownership, I'm very happy that there is support for this facility and the monument, and appreciate everyone's time to meet offline to really get alignment for the future success of this property and the monument. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to add that I really do commend the owner of this property. He explained in the last meeting the hardships that he's encountered since purchasing this property, but he has continued to hang in there and support the rehabilitation of this structure to maintain its historic character. And so I just wanted to comment on the appreciation that I have for this property owner in continuing to invest in this beautiful historic building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Pettit?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add that although no one's here from the council office, I just wanted to point out that Councilman Polensik is still in support of the designation.
Thank you for clarifying that and adding that. Other questions or comments from the commission? If there are no other questions or comments from the commission, would someone like to make a recommendation for nomination and to continue the process? Mr. Strickland?
Yeah, I will make the motion to nominate this parcel and this structure for landmark status.
Thank you
And
for that.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you for the motion and the second. For clarification, Mr. Strickland, are you aligned with the what Mr. Pettit outlined for the details of the parcels, the building and the monument being separate? So are they separate nominations, Don, just for clarification, or are these a singular nomination?
This is, at this point in time, this is one nomination for the hall and the building on the one parcel. We will address the monument separately at a later time when it's more appropriate. I would also point out that we've already nominated the building as a landmark. Today's motion is to proceed with the designation and to prepare legislation.
All right, so
Thank
I amend my motion not to nominate the structure, but to advance in the process to present the council for approval as a landmark. And that just this structure and the parcels associated with this structure, not including any other parcels or the war memorial.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you for that amendment.
Second.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you for the commitment of the ownership and the CDC related to this property. We'll now move on to the certificates of appropriateness. We'll begin with our first applicant, located at Franklin Yards, Cook Bousfield House at 3105 Franklin Boulevard. For the applicant, please use the raise hand function and open up your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Yeah, hi, Andrew Irusi from the Dalit Group. Not sure how to use the raise hand function, but hopefully you can hear me, see me. So this is 3105 Franklin Boulevard, what we're calling Franklin Yards at the moment. I believe this is the third time I've been in front of the Landmarks Commission for this project. First time was in late 2019 when we were seeking approvals for demolition of non-historic building additions that had been added over time. Those have been taken down. We were here most recently a couple weeks, maybe a couple months ago for a preliminary approval. So we're back with a little more information and seeking final approvals today. I've got Jeff Gibbon from Gibbon Architecture here with me to assist in feeding you guys some of the design details. But as a refresher, this property sits between 31st and 32nd on the south side of Franklin. It is a property that was purchased in the early 1900s by the YWCA. At that point, there were two mansions, the Cook Bousfield, which you see in the forefront of this rendering, and then a second mansion that they tore down about 10 years later to build two buildings that served as dormitories. The Y was there, and then there's additional fourth building in the back. You can kind of see it in the bottom right corner of the rendering. It's a metal shed building that was built as a recreation space. The Y was here, I think into the 50s, and then there was an organization of nuns that inhabited the property for some time, and then it became a family medical care facility in the 70s, and that's when they made over the 70s, 80s, 90s, a series of additions connecting the buildings. There was a corridor that was connecting the entry that you see in the front dormitory with the gable roof there, that wrapped around and connected to the front of the mansion. There was a connector between the mansion and the red building, and then they also came in and added the elevator tower and connector between the two buildings that sit on 31st Street. So we sought approval again to take down the majority of those connections that were made, the one along Franklin and the one between the mansion and the rec building in the back. We left the elevator connector, which will serve as our main entry to the property. I'll point out one thing that changed here with this rendering, subtle, but we had talked about a color scheme of trim and finishes for windows and architectural elements on the building that was more of a gray brown kind of color. So you'll see that difference. The rendering has been updated to reflect that, and there's some material color swatches that give a little more of a picture of what that is. We haven't made a selection on which manufacturer we will use for the windows. They will be exact historic replicas, and we've got some details in the set that speak to that, show you existing profiles and then profiles that will be used to match. So we don't have an actual color code, but we know that all of the manufacturers offer something in this basic color that we've selected. So if we can move to the site plan. So this is existing survey. Again, that connector was taken down there. We peeled off the connection from the mansion to the red building. In the process, also exposed a historic porch element that had been enclosed and was, I think, serving as a pantry and a kitchen. So that'll be renovated, reinstated, and exposed on the interior face of the courtyard. But if you continue to scroll through, gosh, I should have it open. I don't know which page. So yeah, there's an aerial again, showing the connection that was taken down. There's some existing or more recent existing photos of the building. You can kind of see in the bottom left there, that's the porch that I mentioned that had been enclosed in a corridor that's now fronting the interior courtyard space. Some more progress photos. If you continue to scroll, we did add some historic images that we had sourced. Here you go. That was a request, I think, that was made in the last meeting. So you got one picture of the dorm building shortly after they were built on 31st Street, and then on the right side of the page, two different eras of the mansions, the lower being an older photo where you can still see the adjacent property before the dorms were built and the house that was there, and then a later photo of it above. If you continue to scroll through, I'm trying to get to the plan. So here's the material kind of general palettes that we were asked to add. I mean, a lot of the building again is existing condition, so existing brick that will be cleaned and repointed, and but then some of the new materials, the trims, that's the kind of the window and trim color there on the left, and then a sample of the kind of shingle looking asphalt roof that will be used both at the front dorm building and then for the replacement of the roof on the cook booth kitchen. So yeah, if you can continue to scroll through, just some details here of existing and new doors. Here's the windows, so you can see there's existing window types. We were able to use the windows that remained in the basement that were original windows to match the profiles for the proposed window types that you see below there. Continuing to scroll, these are the windows in the mansion. Those were a little more simple, I guess, window profiles, 1/1s. So we'll be matching those as well with it'll be an aluminum extrusion historic replica window. So that's the demo diagram again. I think I covered that. If you keep scrolling through, at some point we should get to proposed. So these are all just existing condition documentations. This is very much, by the way, the set that we submitted to SHPO for our historic tax credit approvals that we received. So here we go. That's the current proposed development site plan. This shows landscaping, which actually at the end of the set has now been specified in terms of plant materials. This also shows existing trees, which I think are better identified on the next page. Yeah, so I believe the notes call out existing trees, which are essentially the four, all the ones that are colored here. I think that's how we're identifying it. So
yeah, the green trees are existing, and the one orange tree is an existing tree that we need to remove, just because that's where all of the services will be coming into the building, into the apartment building.
correct. The lighting plan, we've shown signage as well. There's an elevation of a retaining wall that'll have our signage element on it, I think towards the end. Is that right, Jeff?
Correct, yeah.
Existing floor plans, sections of the building. I'll note here, this reminds me, last week we received approval from Historic Design Review. There was one condition in that they wanted us to come back with a little more information on that front porch that will be built again in front of the mansion there. You can see an elevation of it kind of in the center of this page. We have some detail that we're showing here, but I think there was a little more desire to see some dimensions and some more close-up section cuts and stuff like that. So we're working on that and planning to go back in the near future to present that. More elevations of the building. Oh, here you go. There's the signage wall kind of in the middle of this page here. So two locations, right, Jeff, that we're showing it? You want to?
Sure. The two locations where we're putting signage, and I think the signage for this project is more subtle. In the top left is a blown up elevation of the east elevation, which is along West 31st, just to the right. This is in the connector between the two historic apartment buildings. Correct, that's right. And we are adding, so that's across the street from the parking lot where we are providing most of the parking for the building. And so we're creating a new entrance for the project there. So that will be, we imagine, the entrance that's most used by tenants who are driving, coming and going. So we're putting signage there on brick walls. That brick we haven't selected the brick yet, but just for that new brick to match the brick of the connector building behind it. And then below that, in the sort of the center left of the page, is a freestanding landscape wall that appears in the landscaping plan. It has some pathway lighting integrated into it, and then pin-mounted metal signage on the north side of it that would be visible from the sidewalk and from Franklin. And then I believe the next page is the landscape plan.
That's where I was getting to. There you go.
There.
So yeah, as Jeff mentioned, we also, with this property, acquired the lot there at 31st and Franklin on the southeast corner. It backs up to the Rhodes property. So that is going to continue to serve as our parking lot for the project. We are adding a nice landscape buffer all along West 31st Street that wraps Franklin with some decorative metal fence and masonry brick piers that will also, I think, have a couple light poles on them. Is that right, Jeff? Have we shown 2 poles that have to be added here?
I think he's buffering.
He might be frozen there. Yeah. We kind of went back and forth between adding light or trying to work off existing street poles. We're kind of assuming, just based on what we've observed, that there's a little additional light that'll be needed. So keeping it minimal, but using something, just to meet basic code requirements for light spread. So I think that's pretty much covers most of it. Can certainly answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We'll move on to feedback from the local committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the commission. This is Donna Gregonis with Ohio City Incorporated, Neighborhood Development Director. So Dallard Group did present to the local design review committee, and this was approved with some conditions unanimously. So the conditions were to come back with further details for the porch and fencing. I know those were 2 really important details that they'd like to review in the future, but they seemed excited about this project and it was approved as presented. So looking forward to seeing it come to life, or back to life, I guess. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other people from the city to speak on behalf of the project? I don't see any others. Okay, then we will open up the floor for the commission for questions and comments. Ms. Bailey?
Again, this is a beautiful project you're working on and restoring this existing building. I just only have a few questions related to the low walls. And that's the decision of the owner. I see that you're not using any fencing, so you're leaving the property open. So that's a nice gesture. But on the low walls, what type of material is it? Because I noticed when you were doing the signage, you have brick wall with like a white type of coping on top of it. Is that the same material along West 3rd and Franklin? If you can go to some of the photographs, I couldn't tell what type of, unless those are existing and you're not doing anything with it. Just want to know what type of material those are.
Yeah, so I'll let Jeff chime in too. I think if he's connected here, but
I'm back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost my connection for a second.
So
Apologies.
I think the new walls, right, Jeff? We're thinking would be a brick again to match existing brick with stone coping. There is an existing wall retaining wall along West 32nd Street that our plan is, if it's structurally sound, which we're still assessing, basically just to do any kind of repairs that might be needed and restore that wall, maybe even refinish it. We've talked about looking at a brick veneer on it, but if it's in good condition and we can make the concrete look attractive, we would probably just use it and leave it as is and put a nice decorative fence on it. So I will clarify. So we are showing a fence. If you zoomed in on the plan, you'd kind of see a couple gate door looking elements at the walks coming in there. So as Donna mentioned, that was the second thing that design review conditioned. So in addition to the front porch, they wanted to see more detail on the fence we want to use. So historically, the property did always have a fence there. We plan to use something very much that has an ornamental wrought iron decorative metal look to it that runs across Franklin Boulevard and ties into that retaining wall.
All right, thank you. And
Yeah.
then one more question. I didn't hear in your presentation. Do the site with the landscape, will it be some furniture on the site, the landscape area around the site? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so we haven't selected furniture, but we'll definitely, one of the things that drew us to this property, we like to put a big green space element incorporated into all of our projects. So here, this obviously sets up really nicely with the internal courtyard. We haven't gotten to the point of selecting furniture yet, but within that internal space that will, really be for the use of the residents at the property, there will definitely be some furniture and kind of in some of the patios that you can kind of see carved out, if that's what you're asking.
Well, typically, if this is, you're asking us to approve the landscape, if you are having some furniture, normally we see it with the landscape work along, if it's within the space, if it's not on the building, and if it's on the landscape, it's usually with it. So that's why I asked that question.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
But that's all my comment. Thank you.
And those are for more fixed furnishings versus loose furnishings, often too, though. Mr. Benezzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to start by commending both the applicant and the architect for this just like very in-depth and beautiful presentation. I know last time we had comments that we brought up about the landscaping, and like the thoroughness of and the beautiful landscape presentation that you brought forward is just truly amazing. And I just want to like commend the fact that even in designing the landscape, you kept in mind the like original like architectural intent of the building, and the kind of like the matching of the new landscape design with the historic existing structure. I think all of it just really blends. And just, I wish more people would take the level of care that it seems that you are taking. I think that's more of a personal statement of mine than on behalf of, our commission. But I'm just very excited for this project to see how it goes forward. From every detail, just seems to be considered in how it relates back to this beautiful existing historic building that we have in this community. I think it's a really, really, really well done project. So thank you for sharing that with our city.
Yeah, thanks very much.
And that's all.
Go ahead. Anything else, Mr. Benezzi?
No, that's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Santora?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to echo the sentiments of Mr. Benezzi. I think this is a great project, really well done. My only comment would be if we can go to the site plan that shows the parking lot. I see that you're enlarging the curb cut onto Franklin. Did you guys explore or look at alternatives to remove that curb cut off of Franklin and move it to 32nd Place? I know you would end up losing 1 or 2 spots. But I really think it would be helpful to maintain that edge along Franklin and buffer out the parking if you could get that curb cut off of there.
Yeah, so I think we did take a quick look at it. It does, maybe Jeff, I don't know if you remember exactly how many spaces we lost, but we definitely lose spaces.
I believe it was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I believe it was 3 total.
Okay.
Possibly 4. And I'll jump in really quickly. The reason for widening the curb cut is because we wanted to provide double loaded parking, and the curb cut where it currently is offset to the east side of the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And so it would not align with the drive aisle in that parking area there.
Okay. So could you guys absorb the loss of those parking spaces to move it, or is the amount of parking that you have contingent on moving the building forward?
So we're, from a code standpoint, I think we could absorb the loss of parking. As a developer in Cleveland, our experience shows that 1-per-1 code is sometimes not quite enough. So we try to basically get to one per bed. And I think, we wouldn't feel comfortable really with less parking. So I think that's why we ultimately decided to leave it where it was and to utilize the existing curb cut. We've tried to minimize any parking in the interior court. You can see we do have a few spaces there, and those are really meant to be the ADA access spaces, and plus like one or two others out of convenience. But so we'd probably, if we didn't have the option of using Franklin, we'd probably feel like we needed to find a way to try and create more internal spaces. Again, just based on our experience as a property manager and operator, we feel like we'd end up, with tenants who'd be parking on the street. So.
Okay, no, that's understandable, and I wouldn't want you guys to expand the parking inside the courtyard. I think you guys have done a fantastic job in there with the landscaping. So
thanks.
I can live with it. I'd still like to see it move, but I'm not gonna push it too hard. I think it's a great project. So
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Santora. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also agree. I think this is a great project. It's nice to see this coming together. I am just curious, this is not really germane to what we're voting on, but when the Franklin Lofts was renovated from the old YMCA, the developer was able to incorporate a lot of interior original historic features, whether it be woodwork, strapwork ceilings. They even uncovered a brick fireplace mantle under drywall, which they incorporated into their designs. I'm just curious if you were able to find any original moldings, trims, fireplace mantles, built-ins that you were able to incorporate into your design, just out of curiosity.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the dormitory buildings, I think, were built a little more economically. So there wasn't a lot of interior features that were decorative or ornamental. There's some existing, kind of doors that we're talking about refurbishing in certain areas of that building. But it was pretty much kind of hard lid, plastered square boxed rooms. The mansion, however, certainly does have a lot of decorative, really ornamental trims, crown moldings. Trying to think of, Jeff, the elements that are kind of in the center of the room that are round shaped and really decorative that we've...
The pendants that used to hold the lighting fixtures in the ceiling. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, the medallions. That's
the medallions. There we go. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, we've been working on getting molds made of those so that we can match and restore all of them. And as well as there's some doors in that house that are large, round arch doors that we're restoring and reusing. So
Great to hear.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions or comments from the commission? I will give my comments. I think there's nothing, I think the rest of the commission has said everything that I wanted to say. I think this is a great project. I commend you for the care that you're taking of the facility and, the landscape to align it with the original intent and use of the property. So I think it's a great project and I'm in support of it.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Ms. Bailey.
Make a motion to approve the design as presented. I didn't hear any stipulation or anything like that.
Agreed. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Brunges has his hand up before we move on to a second.
I'll wait for a second because
Okay.
There's a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Further conversation? Go ahead, Mr. Brunges.
I believe there was some further details on that front porch that still needed to be hashed out by the local committee, and I don't know if the commission wants to have those returned as well. What were the other conditions from the committee, Ms. Grigonis?
The conditions were, good morning again. The conditions were they would like the design team to come back with further details of the porches and the fence. If they could please come back with those details. That was, their motion was contingent on that.
Thank you for that reminder. So
I will invite, the motion is to approve the presentation that, the motion is to approve the design as presented with the stipulation to come back. Is this okay to the commission if it can go to staff or to review the porch and the fence for staff review? And if they feel it needs to come to the commission, then it can come to commission that way.
I feel comfortable with them returning to staff for the porch, the details of the porch and the fence detailing to return to staff.
That's the motion.
Okay. Ms. Anderson, do you second that with those conditions?
I second that as amended.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second. Further conversation? Mr. Brunges, your hand was still up. Was there further clarification?
Yeah, I'll just, since the local committee asked for it to be reviewed by them, we'll ask them to review it and then we can approve it administratively after that. I think that would be fair, since that was the request.
Okay, perfect. Any further conversation? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you. We look forward to your project moving forward.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our second applicant located at 1730 West 25th Street, 2810 Clinton Avenue, 2459 Washington Avenue, and 4909 Lorraine Avenue. It is the Matthew 25 Collection Sculpture Installation. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Please use the raise hand function, open your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Hi, good morning. This is Greg Peckham with Land Studio. I'm actually going to turn it over to Maria Estes from the Community West Foundation to take the lead on this. They are the primary organization who is leading this, and our staff is helping them to kind of project manage the work and get it done. But this is a Community West project. I'd like them to introduce it.
Welcome.
Well, I see that Maria is there. But in the interest maybe of keeping the
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
I was talking. I'm like, la la la. Sorry, muted. Guilty. Thank you, Greg. Good morning, everybody. My name is Maria Estes. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director with Community West Foundation. As Greg said, this is our artwork project that we present to you. And before we dive into the specifics of the sculptures, I just want to give you a brief overview of Community West Foundation. Next slide, please. Our mission is to advance the health and well-being of our community. And we do this in many different ways. But the primary way that we support the community is through grant making. And so our grant making is focused on basic needs. So anything from providing food or shelter, clothing, medical care, that is where the core of our work is. We are also connected with Fairview and Lutheran hospitals. We were actually the Fairview Lutheran Hospital Foundation before we became Community West Foundation over 20 years ago. But we're still very connected with them, and we support them in grant making and event fundraising, other projects and things like that. Another way in which we support the community is through philanthropic support. So for other nonprofits, we house their agency funds, their endowments. We also help individuals through donor advised fund support, annuities, other planned giving efforts. We look to the book of Matthew in the Bible to help guide our grant making. So the areas called out in that Bible passage are areas in which we look to the nonprofits that we serve in their service to the community. And that's how we decide one of the ways in which we decide how to make our grant funding. So providing shelter to the homeless, eliminating food insecurity, access to clean water, supporting refugees, all healthcare aspects, including addiction recovery, and then helping those who are formerly in prison. In 2020, Community West invested in over 70 nonprofit organizations, and it was our largest year in history of grant making. 7.4 million was given out in grants. The geography in which we serve includes Cleveland, Western Cuyahoga, and Lorain County. We give large grants, like our largest grant goes to the Cleveland Food Bank, but we also support smaller organizations like church food pantries and Meals on Wheels in Rocky River. So next slide. So let me tell you a little bit about how this began. Community West purchased a replica statue of homeless Jesus several years ago. And so the artist that created the sculpture series that you're about to learn about, his most famed piece is Homeless Jesus, and it exists in over 100 cities in the United States and other cities across the world. And our foundation, because we're so focused on helping the homeless, we purchased this replica as a visual representation of helping the least of our brothers and sisters. And the purpose was to travel it around to different churches, different grantees, and just raise awareness about this and raise funds. And so it's been going around town since 2018. And then in the fall of last year, St. Barnabas in Bay Village received the statue for their period of time. And within 20 minutes of it arriving to the site, someone called the police on a homeless person that was sleeping on a bench in their neighborhood. And the priest at St. Barnabas tweeted about it, and within days it went viral. We had national and international media outlets reaching out to us, asking about this, how the police had been called on this statue and what that represented in terms of, you know, the conversation around social justice. And it was a whirlwind. It was exciting, and the statue did exactly what it was intended to do. It was intended to spark the conversation around helping people in need and not turning a blind eye. And it certainly achieved that. We saw dialogue about white privilege, empathy, compassion. And so after this happened, we kind of took a step back from the flurry and said, wow, look at the impact that this made with this one instance. What if we built upon this? And so in talking to the artist studio, we learned that there was in fact a collection of sculptures called the Matthew 25 collection. And with Matthew 25 being our guiding principles, we were struck by this artwork, and we really felt it was something we wanted to do. It's a visual representation of what we do, and let's further that conversation in the community and explore acquiring them. And so we went to our board, they responded, we raised the money. We enlisted Land Studio to help us with the project. They're the experts in terms of the artwork and the installation parts of this. Next slide. So the goals of this project are to elevate awareness and stimulate dialogue around social justice issues, truly human rights, highlight partner organizations that are impacting social justice issues. So you'll learn more about where we intend to install these sculptures, and they're all connected to the Community West Foundation. And we just want to beautify and enhance the community with this artwork and the powerful message that it gives. These are life-size statues, and so they're very compelling to experience in person. And truly, the installation of these is only the beginning. We have so many ideas and just really activation around the artwork, where we want to have a tour, we want to invite the artist here, we want to have outreach to schools and to churches to come and experience these once they're installed. So we see really great opportunity around the project. Next slide. So just a little bit about the artist, Timothy Schmalz. He's Canadian, out of Toronto. He has artworks all across the world. I mentioned the Homeless Jesus being his most famed piece. He actually just commissioned a piece for the Pope that was installed in September. And one significant thing to point out is that once these are installed in Cleveland, we will be only the second city in the world next to Rome, Italy, to host the collection. So that's pretty exciting and significant in terms of putting Cleveland on the map again, because we're great anyway. But and next slide. And now, Greg, I'll turn it over to you if you want to talk about the locations and all the pieces and parts.
Sure. That's perfect. I'll be brief, and Nancy Boylan from our staff, who's been running this project, will kind of close us out with the specifics of each location. But as Maria was saying, the Community West Foundation supports over 70 organizations across the region. So there was no shortage of potential places for these to go. So when we started matching the sort of themes of each of the artworks with their potential grantees, we really kind of had a matrix, and we had a couple important decision-making criteria. One was we wanted these to be, I think this commission knows well the importance of maintenance and sustainability. So we wanted these pieces to be have a home at places where they had the resources and capacity to care for these pieces long-term. We also thought that a bit of a critical mass was important. That if these were clustered somewhat close together, that people could take a stroll, take a walk to experience them and to check them out. So the footprint that we're going to share with you is fairly tight. We shared this with the Ohio City Design Review a few weeks ago. They were enthusiastic about the location. So Nancy will walk you through each one of these, but those are some of the ideas that we wanted to, kind of critical mass, clustering of these, and also, really the importance of matching the theme of the artwork with the mission of the organization that it will be connected with, and their ability to care for the pieces long term. So I'll be quiet and let Nancy take over, and then we can have questions.
Sure. So if you could go to the next slide, please. The community partners that we worked with, both Maria and myself met with them on site to determine the specific location as to where, each of these sculptures will go. They will be maintaining them. They will be hosting that, the sculpture. So we felt as though it made sense obviously for them to be the ones to kind of cite where each of these would go. So Homeless Jesus, this will be installed at St. Malachi Parish, and it'll be kind of like out in the front of the church, in front of their sign on their I guess, out on their patio area. Next one. When I Was a Stranger, this will be on the campus of Urban Community School. It will be located close to the refugee response home. And it'll be at the corner, I think that is West 47th and Lorraine Court. Next. When I Was Sick, this is at Lutheran Hospital. It will be on the, I believe it's the southwest corner of Vestry and West 25th Street. Again, I tried my best. I can't do much of Photoshop. So there's a red line there, kind of showing you where Homeless Jesus will be installed. Next. When I Was Naked, this one will be located at Malachi House. You can see the two references as to where it will be placed. It'll be on their private property up against, kind of tucked up against the building itself. Next. This one is When I Was in Prison. This one actually is already installed. And this is at the Family Ministry Center on Fulton Road. One of the things that I'd like to show also with this picture is the signage that will be installed at every location. You can see the actual physical sign on the bottom, almost center area, and then the actual physical sign in the photo to the right of the sculpture. It'll have that QR code so that visitors will be able to, determine, they'll use their phone and they'll be able to gather information about the sculpture and about the project. Next. So When I Was Hungry and Thirsty, so this one already has been installed. This will round out the sculpture, the 6 sculptures that are in the collection. And this one is currently at Old Stone Church. Next. I believe that is it.
Yeah, so this is just, you can go to the next slide, but this is just, I mean, the project has been doing, I think, exactly what Community West had hoped for about sort of elevating dialogue about social justice issues, using the artwork as a kind of a springboard and a platform for talking about those types of things. So it's really very closely tied to their mission and the idea that these public artworks can be a part of, kind of raising that awareness and making sure that, we as a community are thinking about the importance of those issues. So we will stop there and take any questions. Thanks for everybody's time.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local committee.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. Donna Gregonis with Ohio City Incorporated and Tremont West Development Corporation. So the local design review committee did review all of the sites that are being discussed tonight or today. I did have one question for the design team. Did the placement of the statue at 2810 Clinton get moved since it was reviewed? Okay, so this was approved as presented, with the exception of the placement of 2810 Clinton. And the only concern they had was the original presentation that was given by the team. It was in the public right-of-way, and I think there were some questions surrounding that, but ultimately they approved it. So I think now that it seems to be on private property, I'm sure they wouldn't have any problems with that either, from what I know about them. But this was approved unanimously aside from that one. So everyone was excited about it, and we can't wait to walk and see all of the sites in person when they're here. So thank you.
Thank you. We will continue on from feedback from the councilman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate you having me on this morning and allowing me to speak to the commission. I just wanted to voice my support for this art installation. Thank Community Westland Studio and all the partners who participated in this. As most on this call know, the Near West Side, including, of course, Old Stone Church, have a long history of social justice and serving folks in our community who may be unhoused or seeking out assistance in one way or another. So we, I feel and I believe I can speak on behalf of the community that, this art installation reflects the decades-long values of the community, and will be welcomed here as a way to continue the conversation. That's how we promote social justice and how we, are a welcoming community for everybody. And Madam Chair, whether it be homeless services or LGBT rights or otherwise, our community prides itself on being one that is open and welcoming to people of all backgrounds. So we welcome these art installations, and I again want to thank all of the partners for making this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. We'll move on to feedback from staff. Mr. Pettit?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to point out that the commission has already approved the installation at Old Stone Church. And only 4 of the 5 proposed today are in historic districts. The 5th one on Fulton Road will have to be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission. And Tara Petras is also with us on the phone, and I think she'd like to contribute some comments.
Thank you, Don. This is Tara Petras, the Public Art Coordinator with the City of Cleveland. I'm also in support of this project. I think it's nice to see a series of sculptures being added to the public art landscape, especially with the themes behind Matthew 25. And I believe those particular elements were drawn from the 44th verse in that chapter. And thank you, Don, for mentioning that 3389 Fulton will go to Planning Commission on November 4th. I was going to mention that, but I think this is very well done as a series of sculptures. And I'm fully in support, and I look forward to the additional installations with this project. Thank you.
I would like to.
Thank you, Ms. Petras. Mr. Pettit, we'll now open the floor for questions and comments from the commission. Ms. Bailey, you can go first, and Giancarlo, you can go after that, since I heard you, but I don't see your hand.
These are beautiful artworks, and I really appreciate you bringing attention to the social justice, especially the homeless. Beautiful artwork. Could you go to the one in Cleveland Clinic location? I just have a question for that one. So obviously the Cleveland Clinic sign is going to stay there. So the sculpture is going to be in front of it. So how is it going to affect the signage of Cleveland Clinic information?
That is correct. So we were on site with the staff from the Cleveland Clinic, and so the height of the it's only 39 inches tall, so it will not obstruct any of the signage that relates to the Cleveland Clinic.
Thank you for that. And another question I have, if we can go to the signage that you said is going to be for all the sculptures. I'm not in favor of the QR code. And what is that reference? Is it just giving you history about the sculpture in the program, or what is it for?
So it labels
that the signs give the description about the sculpture. So what's the purpose of the code?
Oh, it takes you
QR
to
code.
the QR code takes you to our website, and there it'll link you to more content about the artwork collection. So say you stumble across When I Was in Prison, and the sign says one of 6 sculptures. You can then access our website to learn about those other sculptures, where they're located, and then continue on if you want to see the rest.
Is it proportional wise? Is it possible you can make it smaller? With a phone still tap into it? It's kind of large in size, taken away, it draws my attention to it before I can start reading, the text. So if it can get smaller and you can still be able to tap your phone on it?
I will have to look at the technology, but I don't see why not. We could look into that.
Okay. Or another option is, I understand that that's just one option, but if that won't work, and maybe have some attachment on the side with your information, and people can just grab it out. I know it rains and snow and all that, and I understand that's what you're looking at. I'm just wondering if it's something. I have, like in real estate, or various, they have like flip flops. You can put information inside and protect from the rain, and you can have your information that way, if you know what I'm talking about. And it can protect your information if you decide to use some type of card without putting that code on the sign. So that's what I'm just looking at, those two things that you can investigate. But that code is kind of too, the sign is beautiful if that's what we're improving on or we're looking at a vote on, but that code is too large for it. And then the next comment I have is the timeline. Again, I like the concept of what your organization doing. Is each sculptures going to stay there permanently, or are you looking at rotating at other locations that would have interest in putting it on their property?
These are actually going to be permanent installations. We have MOUs with each of the sites. The only way in which we would move them is if the organization where they currently are, if they leave that location or they change their mission or something drastic to that effect. But that's all covered in the MOU. But we intend for them to stay where they're at indefinitely.
All right, well, thank you. Great job, and continue with the good effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. I personally think the QR code is a good way to since everyone has gotten used to using QR codes to access material since post-COVID, I think it's a great way to maintain that information there and up to date and relevant versus paper personally. But I do agree maybe the proportion could be smaller so it's less of a focal point and allowed your logo and the information to be the dominant part of the sign. But that's my personal opinion there. Giancarlo, I believe you're next, even though
Thank you. I just want to comment on what a wonderful project this is. I'm really pleased that we're using permanent materials, granite, marble, and bronze, which are classical and everlasting, which is, I think, a great addition to Cleveland. And to our appreciation of art in general as a community. I think my only comment is regarding that code, which is a little maybe excessively large, and I'm not sure because so many the artists and the people involved in the project have websites and other ways of for people to contact them if they need any additional information or knowledge. So I'm not sure that code is really necessary, but the project in general is amazing. I love bronze. It's one of the greatest, probably the ancient technology of human history. So it's just wonderful to see these permanent, lasting pieces of work, art in Cleveland. Thank you so much for doing it.
So I'll just jump in on thank you for that. Of course, especially coming from you, we know that those are important elements of this project. In terms of the QR code, we'll take a look at that. If there's one thing that's probably the easiest of this entire thing to adjust, that's it. So we're happy to look into that. And if if we downsize it, kind of make it more proportional, we'll do that. We do think it is important. Because most people will probably experience these as a one, kind of they'll come into contact with one. So we really like the idea of giving them the opportunity to understand that it is part of a bigger collection of pieces. So that's kind of the motivator behind that. but we will certainly look at, getting it sized appropriately so it still functions, but isn't such a dominant feature to the signs going forward.
Thank you, Greg.
Excellent. Thank you, Giancarlo. Mr. Tarasik?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add my support to this as well. This is a wonderful, wonderful project. These sculptures are very, very moving, and love how they are being distributed around our community and placed in wonderful places around our community. The one question, and I agree with the QR codes as well. The one question I have though is I could see individuals seeing these sculptures, and whether they're other organizations or individuals themselves, finding them quite moving themselves, and questioning whether there's an opportunity to purchase a smaller replica of a bronze type statue like this, and then perhaps using those proceeds for other social justice endeavors as well. Has there been any thought to that as well? Because I think that might be an opportunity, but I just think the project itself and where the locations are just very phenomenal and very, 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 very moving. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tarasik. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was walking downtown a few weeks ago and I happened upon the When I Was Hungry statue in front of the Old Stone Church, and I found it very powerful, very moving. The message is very, very thoughtful and very gripping. But I think part of the reason that it was so powerful is the outstanding execution of the sculpture and the skillful rendering of the forms there. So I totally applaud these installations. I think they're going to be a wonderful permanent addition to our environment here, and I think that the sculpture was very fitting for the beautiful historic Old Stone Church. Just a beautiful piece of art. I also think that probably we should keep the QR code. If we can minimize it a little bit, that'd be great. These days in real estate, we really don't use those flyers. They created a lot of litter. They weren't very green, and most people want to look things up online. So I think that the QR code does detract a little bit from the plaque, but it is useful. It's a great way to convey the message. So thank you very much for bringing this to our city. I really, really applaud this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just dropped into the chat. There's a link to the small replicas that are available. And so it is something that Community West has definitely thought of as a sort of, a way to sort of perpetuate the project. So you can take a look there at that link whenever you have time and see what those look like.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Since we've gone through on everyone's comments, Mr. McCormick, or I'm sorry, Councilman McCormick, I see your hand still up. Did you have additional comments before I continue on?
Nope, just forgot to lower it. I apologize.
No problem. Mr. Bonezzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I only had one comment about the QR code because I weirdly have had a project before where I had to get a QR code made into a sign. And as long as there is enough contrast, they were able to do it in the same bronze material when I did this project like 2 years ago. It was just a question because I know in this one it's a black and white kind of like applique sticker instead of being like a part of the sign. I don't know if that's something you want to look into in case like the code ever has to change in the weird event that the link gets broken or something like that. But I do know that it can be done where it's like a part of the material instead of like kind of an image that's attached to the bronze sign. So that's just something to consider, whoever is making your signs, just to bring up and see if they can do that. That was all.
Yeah, thanks for that. We did not look into that as an option, so we will see if the fabricator that we've been working with has that capacity.
fabulous. That was my only comment. Otherwise, I'm excited to see them.
Thank you, Mr. Benezzi. Ms. Bailey, you have additional questions or comments?
I like that idea with the comment about the color. See if you can, I like that. Um, after this project is finished and it's permanent, are you looking at in the future finding other location, or is this the end of it?
So this will be the end of the installation of the collection, the permanent collection, but we will have activations around it. So we want to put out the map of where they're located and have scheduled tours for people to go and see them all in one visit. We're going to have the artist come here and have him give a talk on how he created and how he was inspired to make these. So there will be ways in which we further the conversation and keep people interested in the artwork, but we don't foresee additional pieces.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. I didn't actually give my full comments before, but I think, I echo everything that has been said and asked. And as I mentioned, start off, I do really support this project. I think it's a wonderful community addition and education of, the issues, at hand that we do need to talk more and bring more visibility to. So I think this is a great project, and the locations are, very thoughtful related to each organization. So I'm in support, of the project. And I was going to mention the same thing Mr. Benezzi did is, just if it can't be, if the QR code cannot be, reduced and or incorporated into the sign itself, just changing the contrast so it looks more like a element of the sign versus an added addition to the sign. Other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
I put forward a motion that that is approved as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yes. Could we add the barcode as part of the motion?
Well, I think we do need to give the applicants some time to do their due diligence of how to
Okay.
reduce the,
Right.
the recommendation to reduce the QR code size. I think you can do that as a condition.
Okay, that's fine.
I agree.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Miss Anderson,
Yes.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Benezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchia,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yeah.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously.
excellent. Well, this is a very exciting project. And what's your timeline for installation?
Well, we hope to get them all installed before the end of the year, but they are delayed due to the global shipping backlog due to the pandemic. So we're hopeful, but we're realistic as well.
Okay.
Well, we look forward to the installations.
Beautiful project.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to our fourth applicant located at 11150 East Boulevard, Fine Arts Garden Extension. We'd like to welcome the applicant. Please, you're welcome to open up your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Jeffrey Streen. I'm here today representing the Cleveland Museum of Art and also the Fine Arts Garden Commission. And today we are presenting a project on a site that is, it's actually a piece of the Fine Arts Garden. I'll explain that a little further. Next slide, please. So the site is actually across the street from the Fine Arts Garden, but that was something that happened kind of at the beginning of the planning of the Fine Arts Garden. So and the museum has been maintaining it as part of the garden since its inception in 1928, or incorporation in 1928. And here is a view of the plan from the Olmsted Brothers firm, showing the complete site before it was segmented, but there's a dotted line showing the proposed Chester Avenue cut. Next slide. Here's an image of the Olmsted Brothers plan after that street had been planned and implemented. And you can see it still remained part of the Fine Arts Garden planning and thought process, even after it was separated from the terminus of the garden. And it was something that the Olmsted brothers embraced. They said, this is actually a better configuration for our plan, a more symmetrical terminus to the garden. Next slide, please. So the Northeast Ohio Sewer District has been installing infrastructure. I'm sure you all have heard about it, in an effort to mitigate flooding in the University Circle area. And as part of their project, there was a line item in their planning of about $230,000 to rehabilitate the property once their infrastructure had been installed. And then when it came to our attention, we agreed to take that piece of that project after their infrastructure work was done, and make a more enhanced plan, something that was more in keeping with the quality of the work that we've been trying to do in the Fine Arts Garden as part of the landscape master plan of the Art Museum. Next slide. So here's, this is just a slide showing the infrastructure on the right, the portion of that plot that is dedicated to infrastructure, and you'll see some more details of this to see how it would actually appear. Next slide. So there was an effort. There are several comprehensive master plans in operation here. The Sasaki and Associates had done one for the university, which was pretty large in scope, and then the museum hired Sasaki as well to knit together all of the various pieces of land that surround the art museum, including the Fine Arts Garden, and create a comprehensive rehabilitation plan for it. And it has been partially implemented, though we're still looking ahead to future improvements. And then there was a comprehensive look once this site became a focus and perhaps an opportunity to do something a little bit bigger. Sasaki was engaged by both UCI and the Art Museum to look at this little parcel, and to UCI to look at the larger, what is currently the David Davis Garden, to see if that could be improved in terms of its use and its connectivity. Next slide. Here is a view of that comprehensive look. We're only today looking at the Art Museum's portion of it, which is a Fine Arts Garden. And you can see there's a kind of we treated this as an opportunity to do a couple of things. One, to open up a vista towards the Fine Arts Garden, so that to make that connection a little bit clearer. And two, to reinforce the University Circle, the memory of University Circle, the trolley turnaround. The commemorative sculptures on that and the adjacent sites are all looking towards the center of that circle. So this plan hopefully makes reinforces the memory of the old circle and makes sense out of the commemorative sculptures that are all looking towards what was the center of that trolley turnaround. Next slide. So here is the original concept plan. We priced that plan, and it was kind of beyond our means. UCI has been working with us to raise the funds for this project. we've taken it from the 230 that was originally slated by the sewer district for the rehabilitation of the site, and we have now over $800,000 budget, that we've raised towards improvements of the site. So it had to be reduced in scope, and that is on the right. And then there's a rendering in the next slide. I'm here today with Ivan Valentic, and he will take it from here, I believe. He is an architect with GPD who is working with Gil Bain, who is the construction manager for the project. Ivan?
Yep, thank you, Jeffrey. And I'll just walk you through. This is our, I guess, most updated and current plan. You know, we've collected a lot of information in ground truth, the initial master plan, and what we've kind of got. Where we're at today is very, very close to that initial concept that was developed. We've also worked closely with the sewer district to understand their needs and how we incorporate that infrastructure and blend it into a nice a holistic solution for the site. So I'll kind of start. You can see MLK to the top of the page, Chester Avenue to the left, and then Euclid Avenue at the bottom. And if we start from the top, what we've really done with this project from the north is opening up that corner there to start to accept people coming across from the Fine Arts Garden. And one of the changes you'll see in this plan is that we've also now incorporated a sidewalk along MLK. So that'll allow for people to come across there as well. And if you come across, you can see the sewer district area. All of their infrastructure, not all, most of their infrastructure is actually going to be below ground. And what you'll see at grade are a couple manhole lids, and really electrical control panel is all that you'll see above grade. We've coordinated with the district, and the surface for the vehicles to enter the site, because they will need to enter. They will enter from MLK, and they will exit on Euclid Avenue. But when they enter, they're going to enter on a reinforced grass turf surface. So our goal here is for this to look like just an open lawn area. However, we do need to define the edge of that reinforced turf with flush, concrete curbing, so that vehicles do know where they can drive and they can't drive. But when you look out over this area, it will all look like turf with a couple of these things popping through the grass. We are screening that electric panel in service there right off of MLK, and we're providing a little bit of screening off Euclid Avenue just to soften the view of that area. There are bollards that are removable that are shown off of MLK and Euclid Avenue. We're going to further continue to have the dialogue with the city to understand the requirements, if there are any from the city's perspective, but we do want to prevent vehicles pulling in and out of the site, and that is only intended to be used by the district. We did attend a design review meeting, and in that meeting, one of the comments we received was providing using the sewer district improvements as an opportunity to educate the public on what was constructed here and why it's important. So we thought it was a great idea. Jeffrey and I chatted about it. So we have added an educational sign that kind of speaks to the improvements that the sewer district's doing to help with the flooding in UCI. But as you swing around on Euclid Avenue, you can see really the main focus of the project is the Hannah Monument. What we've done here is open up that corner again, creating that public space fronting the street that will draw people into the statue in the plaza area. We have amenities at the road, such as benches, trash receptacle, bike racks. There's some UCI has some signage there that we're going to maintain, that informational signage. And as you enter the space, again, it's all centered around that circle, and that arc sidewalk is again reinforcing that old right of way from the trolley turnaround. But as you enter, we're going to maintain the statue in its current location, and the pavers that are around it that are shown in that dark red. and we're gonna just clean that up and kind of tuck point and repair as needed. We're also gonna blend some new pavers around that statue to create a plaza area. We're looking to match those pavers with something very similar to what's out there now. And then we'll talk a little bit more about some of the site furnishings, again, trying to match the site furnishings that the Olmsted brothers had specified previously in the project and continue to kind of match that the furnishings that are existing. The trail on this page is existing. It's asphalt, travels from north to south along on that western edge. The asphalt portion of it, we are going to rehab. We're going to mill it and replace it. The portion as it enters the kind of the plaza space and the statue, we're looking for it to transition to concrete in that area. That way it kind of all ties in together and it kind of reinforces that arc. As a note, one of the other comments we received in design review was to add benches near that open lawn area. You know, that open lawn area is really intended for a future phase. As Jeffrey mentioned, there's funding for what's shown on the plan now, but that open lawn is really intended for, as right now, to function as a flexible space. But at some point there could be future improvements there. And we have added benches along the trail for seating that could be directed to the trail or to the open space. And that was one of the comments from design review, and we have addressed it. The last comment we received in design review was the pedestrian crossings across MLK and Euclid Avenue. And what we did was we just updated this rendering to show that there's existing crosswalks out there now. We just depicted them a little bit better in this concept. So we feel comfortable with the crossings that are there. There's signals there already. We're gonna anything inside the curbing from Chester and Euclid and MLK is either going to be new pavement or we're going to replace any pavement that needs to be replaced. But that corner at Chester and Euclid Avenue can be completely redone. So those ramps will be corrected and meet the city standards, but also repair any cracks because it'll all be new pavement. There is landscaping in front of the statue to kind of provide views to the statue and highlight the statue. And then landscaping on either side of the statue, which will reinforce the arc of the old trolley turnaround. Jeffrey, is there anything you want to add to this rendering before we go to the furnishings?
No, it's only that, one of the other comments from design review is that they had, I think the usability of this site has been compromised by the intense kind of traffic that encircles it. It's kind of like a Columbus Circle sort of situation. It's a beautiful center anchor, but it's kind of difficult to get to. And while it's not in the scope of this project, it was commented on in the Sasaki study of the larger area that calming traffic and reinforcing the crossings would definitely improve the use of this particular site.
And we've done what we can on our site, I think, to help, crossings and getting across each roadway. And if you go to the next slide, you could get a sense of the top image is the reinforced paving, the grass pavers or the grid on the sewer district site, and how that we intend for that to blend in and still be a public space and open lawn area. You can see the bench. If you go out there to the site now, the same benches are out on the site. It's the old World's Fair bench. We're continuing to use the same bench, but possibly be backless in areas, so it's more flexible in certain situations. And then, complementary bike racks. We need to finalize that, but that's the intent of the bike rack situation as well. If you go to the next slide, this image is from the master plan. Gives you an idea of what the overall design intent was. That you can see the Hannah statue there in the top, towards the top corner, and how it was at that time was intended to reinforce the old trolley right away. and how the other monuments kind of all work together in this intersection, and how the thought was that that monument and that plaza space would really start to engage the public right away, and that is all still our intent, even though the design has changed slightly. And if you go to the next slide, it gets you down into the site and gives you a sense of the design intent. This is still going to be similar, high canopy trees. We're trying to save almost all the trees that are on site now, and we'll kind of prune those up and remove any dead limbs. So the tree canopy is going to be fabulous, and giving those trees a new breath of life. The monument will stay in that same location with that little low garden landscape kind of sitting the foreground and the pavers around it, emphasizing this public open space. The main difference is you can see there's a seat wall behind the statue. That seat wall is not part of this it's not part of the project, due to some funding issues and trying to get all this pulled together. I think that's our last slide. If Jeffrey, you want to add anything, or we can open it up to questions.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for that feedback, or that presentation. We'd ask for feedback from the local commission or committee. Ms. Scott, please go ahead.
Good morning, commissioners. This did go to the Euclid Corridor Design Review Committee. And one thing that I do want to point out is the activity that is taking place to the west of this site, which many of you may know is the Circle Square development that encompasses a great portion that's directly adjacent from this site. And so the developers of that project were made aware of this proposal and the conditions to better integrate the pedestrian connection between this extension site as well as their development site. And so they've been working very closely with UCI and the city to meet or enhance, I guess, the conditions that were laid out in with the Euclid Corridor Committee's meeting motion and their conditional approval. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that feedback and that summary.
Sure.
We'll move on to others from the city here to speak on behalf of the project. Do we have feedback from the councilman on this one, Don?
I do not. He did receive the agenda, but we received nothing from him at this point.
Okay. Then we will move on to opening the floor for the commission for questions and comments. Ms. Bailey? Ms. Bailey, you are still muted if you are speaking.
Thanks. So why the Northeastern District was doing their project or maybe doing it, how much of the existing landscape is still in the project? Is majority of it is still in the play? I mean, or this is all new?
The large, the mature trees that are in good health are all being maintained, and then there's a significant amount of additional plantings that are going on between the bed plantings and some new tree plantings. So everything significant and healthy that is there will remain, and then we're adding to that.
All right. You made a comment about vehicle coming on to the site with a paver is off in Martin Luther King right there. So they just come in there just to do maintenance work. on the equipment's below. Is that how that works?
That's correct.
Okay. Also, you mentioned about the air vents on the site. How many is on there?
Yvonne, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, the site furnishings, is that the question? How many we have?
Yeah.
I'd say approximately.
And how tall?
We have approximately 8 benches on site, and then there's I believe 5 bike racks shown.
And what color are they?
The bench is shown on the screen is what's existing out there. It's a wood bench with black iron, legs and arms, and then the bike racks would be something similar to what's shown here to match.
Oh, no, that's not. I'm sorry about that. I'm talking about the equipment that's under the ground.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned about the air vent that's coming from the equipment. I just want to know how tall that is and will we be able to see it, when you're walking on the site and what color it is.
You mean the big?
It was mentioned in the presentation.
They're the big snorkels, I believe, is what a lot of people call them. It's like a large, tall curved vent, right? Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. And the electrical equipment is going to be left on, is also standing about, I'd say probably about 6 feet tall, but that is also encased in a black ornamental fence. And we do have some landscape around that to kind of screen that material.
And that was going to be one of my questions, if you're going to put some landscaping around it. And the color you're saying is black?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering if it can be painted, to blend in. Because could we go back to that previous slide and zoom in to that artwork further up? Not go past the benches and where the 3D artwork. No, go back where the benches are.
I don't have the
No,
ability
showing them.
to,
No, yeah, right there, and just zoom in.
I don't have the ability to zoom
artwork
in.
so it can enlarge so everyone can see it if you can.
Miss Bailey, I do not have that ability to zoom in. You do
Oh,
have
okay,
that
that's fine.
You have
That's
that
fine.
control on your panel.
Is what we're looking at, is that also part of the new equipment or what?
That is just depicting the reinforced drive. There are other aspects of this rendering that were part of the conceptual plan that are not being implemented. That the stone wall that you see behind the reinforced drive is not part of the current proposal.
Okay, it's not.
This
is
I'm so sorry. This is the only intention of this illustration is to show the reinforced lawn.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks. But the benches and the furniture, I don't have any problem with that. But I'm just trying to visualize how the equipment is going to blend in. And you answered my question. There's a fence that's hiding the air vent. That's the gooseneck shape, and it's 6 feet tall. And I'm just wondering how that's going to blend in with the landscape. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Other questions and comments from the commission? I guess I'll ask mine. I'm trying to read your notes on here to find it where the gooseneck, equipment is and so forth, so that I make sure that I'm clear. Could you point it out, Carl? Like where the fence?
All the equipment is kind of on the between MLK and Euclid Avenue, and that's right there where Carl's at. That's where the taller stuff is, and most of it again is below grade, and it's all installed now. So if you drive by the site, you'll see everything that's going to kind of remain on the site.
Okay, that's helpful. Mr. Brunges, you had some comments or feedback?
Yeah, not to the park itself, but you had mentioned about pedestrian safety, and I'll just mention this as someone who, this is my commute here to work. I drive through this intersection every morning. The concerns I think that were relayed about pedestrian safety crossing over MLK are valid. You see here in this area, there are, you can't see it here off screen, but there are 4 lanes that come into this intersection, and the furthest right is a right turn only. However, traffic does sometimes, and I've seen it go straight through here onto this area that is not supposed to. You know, I think if something is mentioned at UCI, I know my colleague Ms. Scott is here, to do more something of a protection in this area so cars are not able to cross over in here. I know that's outside of your initial scope, but it might be something to relay back for the safety purposes that they were, I think, looking for. It is not a, I've biked through here as well. This is because the bike lane starts right here and it just starts up here. So this is an interesting area to get through either on bike or pedestrian. So I just thought I'd bring that to your attention.
Thank you for that feedback, Mr. Brunges. Mr. Pettit?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question for Mr. Streen. Is there any need or any plan to do any restoration of the Hannah Monument as part of this project?
Good question. Yeah, we're getting an estimate for the cleaning of it. The museum is responsible for all of the sculptures in the Fine Arts Garden, and this being one of them. So it's in good, I believe it was included in the Sculpture Center's restoration about, I don't know, it was like 8 years ago or so. So it's in reasonable shape, but we're going to get an estimate to have it cleaned and resealed, repatinated and sealed as well, and see if we can fit it into the budget of this project.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. That's great to know. Other questions or comments from the commission? I think this is a very creative way to try to incorporate, address a fact of issues that are occurring within the area, but trying to turn it into an asset for the community, and really incorporating the arts to reinforce the University Circle, focus, I think is, a wonderful addition to this area. Or to this site, I should say, within this area. Other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
I want to make a comment and then do a motion. The comment is, I would like to have more information shared with staff, only for appearance look of how the fence and the air vent gooseneck and the landscape around, how that would look, and share that with staff. Because I'm not getting a visual idea how that would look, because that's on MLK and you can see that there's nothing blocking that, like no landscape or tree off at MLK. So I would like that information shared with staff. So have an appearance just to see how that looks. And I'll make that motion. The motion is to approve the artwork presentation as presented, with that stipulation that they share the vertical elements of the gooseneck from the equipment with staff, so they can see how the final look appears from the Martin Luther King view.
Thank you for that motion with those conditions. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any further discussion?
Make a comment. The infrastructure that is part of the sewer district's project is outside of our scope. So that would be something that we'd have to take up with the district.
Okay, I understand. Okay.
Do we amend the motion?
could depict it a little bit better with the fence so that you can see, how, even if it's a picture, then with the fence so that we can maybe fill in the blanks. Is that what you're looking for, Ms. Bailey, just to understand, what?
Yes, at least to understand how it looks. Yeah. We share that information. But it's not part of the motion. I could take that out, the motion, but it is share that with staff so we can see how that looks. Since then, it's not part of their design, it's a separate entity, correct? We only improving the landscape, but understand that another party is doing the infrastructure underneath. I thought I heard earlier that you were working together on this. So,
We
would
so
have liked to.
Chairman can.
I just want to add, we are working together, but their equipment is, out of our control. I mean, they have their standards for that. I think if we could dictate some of that stuff, we would have, but it's out of our control. We're trying to work with is the landscape around it, so we can make it soften its appearance on the site from, like you said, MLK, which we agree with, and within the park. So we will do our best to do that.
Okay, I appreciate that. But I'm not asking you to make any design change to something that's not part of your scope, but at least trying to visualize, block that, appearance of that. So thank you for that. So that's what I want you to share that with staff, and that's part of my motion. The whole presentation is approving that as presented, but add that in to share that information with staff on how to make that more blocking it and also more prettier. Thank you.
One addition that I would recommend adding, which was just brought to my attention, was that we do need the final materials and landscape plans with a planting plan for final approval. So if you could follow up and submit that to staff, I would like to recommend that you add that as a condition to your motion, Ms. Bailey, so that we can get final approval when it's appropriate of the permit.
I agree. I'll add that.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, I believe you seconded it. Do you agree to that additional condition?
Yes, I do. I'll second the additional condition.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay. Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Clicchia, Mr. Clicchia, are you still with us? Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you. We look forward to seeing your project progress.
So much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very much.
We'll move on to our fifth applicant located at 2087 Fairview Avenue, the conversion to a single-family house, front porch and patio renovations, rooftop deck and penthouse landscaping and windows.
Hi, good morning. This is Gary Neola. Good morning, Madam Chair and Landmarks Commission. So it's listed as conversion of a single family, but it's always been a single family home. So I just wanted to clarify that to start with. So it may have been at some point rented out, but it's a single family. It's been zoned single family from its origins. So anyhow, moving on, the slide you see there shows the location along Fairview where this property is. So if we could go to the next slide, we can show you some site dimensions just to get a sense as to how big this property is, the parcel that we're working on. It's 35 feet wide by 102 feet at its furthest depth. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So on this slide, in the lower left-hand corner, I've got markers to show where the various photographs are along the street, so you can see what the adjacent homes look like. And then when you that's the house to the left is the upper left-hand home, and then to the second photo, you can see the side of our project, but behind that is another home that's set back from there. And then the third photo shows the house to the right, but also the project we're working on, where we're going to renovate this single-family home. And then if you look at 4, 5, and 6, those are the views across the street from this particular residence. Go to the next slide, please. So some more views, just showing a little bit closer. We're going to be removing the front porch that has the fence on it that's right up to the sidewalk, and reworking that. So that's a big part of what we're doing. We're trying to return this home to what was like originally built. So that's a big part of this project. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this shows in plan that we are on the left, with the area of the porch will be demolished. It's porch or patio, whatever you want to call it. And then to the right side of the screen, the proposed is to we will build new steps from the sidewalk up with some low retaining walls to get us to new steps that'll go up to the front porch. There's existing flower bed on the along the left side of the home there that are going to remain. So there's really no change to that. Anyway, next slide, please. This just shows the existing floor plan, and so it just gives you a sense as to what we're doing there. This is how we're changing it. Yeah, just the plan view, but what it shows here is that we're adding some windows on the along the left side elevation, to bring some more light into the living area and have visibility to the green space adjacent to this property. And then we're relocating the front door to where it was originally, and putting windows in where they were originally along the front on the first floor. Next slide, please. So this gives you the front elevation of what we're doing. We're going to match the existing brick that's there. We've got a mason that we're real confident they can do some excellent masonry work here to make this look like it was part of the original, like it was back when it was built. And then you have some new plantings in front of the first floor porch. Moving up onto the porch, you can see the stone lintels that are above each of the windows and the door. Same thing on the second floor, and that was the original. Those are in the original location. I mean, that's how we know where things were going back. We don't have photographs of the house from when it was originally built, but just field observation, we can tell where things were. So that's gives us the opportunity to come back to the original. And so when we move up to the second floor, we're using some stylish columns with like a Doric theme to it. But most of this is using the detailing that we would imagine would have been there from the very beginning, and plus adding in the railings at both elevations, the first and second floor. Moving to the next slide, please. So this is the side where the driveway goes along. There's windows that were infilled previously. We're not going to open those up because of just the noise and the adjacency to the next door neighbor. However, the two windows that you do see, the one on the lower level is where you come in off of the back entrance and you come up to a landing. So that brings some light in there. And then the second floor is the top of the stair at the second level. You can also see the side elevation of a on the right-hand side. At the rear, we're adding a covered entrance because there's a door back there. If we go to the next slide, please, you can see that's where the door is. We're adding a covered entrance that mimics the architecture of the front porch with the kind of the hip roof piece to it. Next slide, please. So this side here, we've added some windows, and we're trying to open this up to the again to the green space that's adjacent to this property. Brings light in and just gives you some nice views. Next slide, please. So this is a view as if you're walking down the street, heading towards the house. You'll see what that looks like. Again, you got your existing plantings along the side of the house with the existing like railroad tie planter box there. And you can see where we have the low retaining walls along the sidewalk that turn back to hold the earth so we can have the planted area there. Excuse me. Next slide, please. This would be a view from across the street. Kind of the same, you can see the same thing, but this is what it'll appear as you're walking down the street. Next slide, please. This is when you're flying over, if you have a helicopter. Next slide, please. This is a view from the neighbor's home that's the house that's set back from the street. So that's what they're going to see. Next slide. Yeah, that's just what it's like looking at the side again. I'm sorry. If you can go to the next slide. And this is as you're walking the opposite direction coming up the street, you can see along the driveway what this, when we put in the retaining wall coming out to the street there. Next slide, please. From across the street. Next slide, please. And a straight on view. And these are some of the materials we're looking at for the door. It'll be a Therma-Tru door that it'll be white, not gray. The brick, again, we're going to use to match the existing. We're using Pella Reserve windows, which are for historic purposes. We want to use those double hungs, and also asphalt shingles. It'll be the black sable over the second floor porch roof and the rear roof over the front, that entrance there at the rear. And we're going to use for trim, we're going to use the Boral material because it works really well, being worked very similar to wood. It lasts well due to weather. So we feel comfortable with that. If that's what we're considering, we may end up using wood, but that would be ideally what we would want to use. So I think that's the last slide. So if I could open it up to any questions or comments.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We will begin with feedback from the local committee.
Good morning. This is Ray Christosic. We reviewed the project a couple times. We looked at it conceptually 2 weeks ago, and we asked them to make some changes. And we looked at it on Tuesday. And we thought those changes, one was the rooftop that they decided not to include. So we unanimously approved it. And I'd like to applaud the owner for, restoring this house, removing that bulky patio in the front, and it's gonna return to an owner occupant from a rental property. So these are the things we want to see happen in Little Italy. So we unanimously approved this project. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. We will now open up the floor for questions and comments from the commission. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only question is, right on this elevation, the height of that handrail, does that height mimic what they found as the original height? Or, well, what is the height of that handrail relative to the original?
No, that's a good question. So the height is shown at 42 inches. The building code doesn't require 42, it requires 36. So we're actually going to work with that. We don't know what was there originally. So, but 36 would bring the height of it down a little bit below the trim line there on as you go up the base of the column there. So yeah, so we're going to have a 36-inch high railing, which will meet building code, and I think it works well proportionally.
Right, I agree. And oftentimes we would advocate even for a 30-inch high handrail.
Yeah, the building code won't give us that opportunity.
We have the ability to override that.
Is that right? Okay, good to know.
Yes. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other questions or comments from the commission? I will go next and then turn over to Ms. Anderson. I agree with the comments that were made. I applaud you that Ray made, that I applaud you for converting this back to, its original use and from a rental to a owner occupied. And, besides the handrail that Mr. Strickland just brought up, I think, it's a great conversion. But I would support a lower handrail between, or the 28 to 36-inch height, depending on what is appropriate for this style building, versus the 42-inch.
We will do that. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a wonderful project, a great addition to the neighborhood. I support the lower handrail. I am just wondering what the material of the handrail is.
It's going to be the Boral material or wood. We haven't decided yet, but it's not going to be vinyl by any stretch. It's going to look authentic.
All right, thanks. Yeah, that was my concern. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Other questions or comments from the commission, or someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion. Approve the certificate as presented with the stipulate to lower the handrail for 42 inches. I'm not giving a number, but share that information with staff along with the material, your final material color of the material of the railing.
The Boral or the wood? Okay.
It's wood, yeah. But you just mentioned that you didn't have a particular product or something earlier.
Well, we're considering using Boral, which is a fly ash material. It's something that's comes from it's a sustainable material, and that's
I see it right there.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, so we would like to use that. If it turns out budget-wise it's not going to work, we're going to use the wood, and it'll be painted. We would like to use the Boral because you can, again, it lasts really well. Getting wet, so you could soak it for forever in water just about, and it would do just fine. It's one of those, it just works really well in the weather, and especially Northeast Ohio. So yeah, so it's either going to be Borel or it'll be wood that it gets painted. We'd like the Borel so it doesn't need the maintenance as much.
Well, whatever whatever your decision is, share it with staff.
That's fine.
Whatever it would. So that's the motion, and lower the height and share the height, final height with staff and the final material, wood or board. That's the motion.
Okay, so the motions with the condition to review and lower the handrail height and submit the final material and color to staff for the handrail.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate taking time to review this, and we look forward to getting it executed.
Excellent. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll move on to National Register of Historic Places nominations. I'd like to ask staff to tell us about the project located at 9990 Euclid Avenue, the Euclid Avenue Christian Church, East Mount Zion Baptist Church.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a certified local government, we have the ability to comment on National Register nominations. In this case, it's going to the Ohio Historic Sites Preservation Advisory Board on December 3rd. I also think this one is particularly worthy of comment. I think it's a really important project. The building is a Cleveland landmark. It's recently had some concerns and issues, and I think getting this listed will be a huge and worthy achievement. And Margaret Land, who prepared the nomination, is here from the Cleveland Restoration Society to talk about the nomination, the history of the building, as well as some of the other projects that are going on with the church. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Land. If you'd like to tell us about the project, we would love to hear about it.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. We are very excited about all of the work that has been recently happening at East Mount Zion. So the church was very interested in obtaining the National Register designation as part of their renewed commitment to full restoration of the church and finding use for the church, not only for their congregation and ministry services, but also as a potential partner in the community. So the nomination will be listed under the criterion for architecture, recognizing that it is an extant Akron Plan church designed by architect George Kramer, who is known nationally for church design, especially utilizing the Akron Plan. And this is the only structure we know of in the Cleveland area by that architect. It is clad in the green serpentine stone, setting it apart again from other Romanesque revival churches in the area. The nomination will also be part of the Ohio SHPO's multiple property designation for African American sites throughout the state, because when East since East Mount Zion obtained the church in 1955 and demonstrated a lot of activity in the civil rights era through 1976, the property is eligible to be listed as part of that multiple property documentation. So that will be under ethnic and cultural heritage listing as well. So our period of significance ranges all the way from 1908 when the structure was constructed through 1976. I don't know if there's any other questions about the nomination itself.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. We will open up the floor then for the commission for questions and comments. I guess I'll start us off. I think this is a spectacular building. I think it's very worthy of continuing the nomination or, in this process, and feel it's a great, opportunity to be included in, that application. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Brunges?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had done a lot of research on this building because it was threatened at one point with demolition, and the green serpentine stone is a rare thing here in the state of Ohio, and actually it's getting more rare, even in Pennsylvania where it was mined, and it comes from a historic mine that was actually it was in the middle of the troop movements during the American Revolution. And the stone came later after it had been closed, and they reopened it. And through research, I think I've only been able to identify 5 buildings that were ever built in the state of Ohio with this material, and only 3 remain. One is in Columbus, I think it's the Broad Street Church. And I'm probably going to blank on the other one. East Liverpool.
East Liverpool
has the church, and then the 2 that have been demolished, one was in Mansfield, and the other one was in Dayton. There was a mention of a 6th one that was a house, but that was supposed to be here in Cleveland as well, but have not been able to find any documentation on that 6th building. So this is one of 3 remaining with this material as its exterior. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. That's what's always caught my eye about this one, and remember that. Ms. Anderson, questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I know there was some discussion, I think last year, about possible demolition of the building, as you mentioned. And I went over to walk around the outside. It's an amazing place. I was concerned though, because the exterior siding is showing some signs of spalding, material spalding. Definitely has some deterioration, and the roof, you can even see in some of the photos, there we go, that the roof is old and needs to be replaced. So my question is, with this designation and listing, would the owners be able to avail themselves of some funding to address some of these exterior issues, which are urgent? I think these things need to be taken care of sooner than later.
Yes, the hope is that this will open up some doors. For example, the Partners for Sacred Places, a national trust grant, that this will open some doors for that funding. They have secured some grant funding to do emergency roof repair, and that is actively being done now. They've also done some emergency stabilization repair to the stone. We did receive, with partnership through the city and the Landmark Commission office, we have received a certified local government grant to do a full study of the serpentine stone, and that actually will start in 2 weeks. There is a high chance that the building will need refaced down the road. Serpentine stone was never a good choice, unfortunately, for exterior building material, especially in our climate. And this is something a lot of properties, especially in Pennsylvania, where the stone comes from, these properties have been facing this. The Broad Street Church that Carl mentioned has been totally refaced with a synthetic product. Other buildings in the Pennsylvania area, we've seen a combination of patching products or refacing options, either natural stone or a synthetic product. So this facade study that's going to kick off here in a couple weeks will hopefully provide the church with several options of what to do about the serpentine spalling and several cost estimates related to that project, because that's obviously, if they're launching a capital campaign, that's going to be a huge part of that fundraising, and they need to know what's the roadmap for repair and how much it's going to cost. So they're trying to be very conscious in those steps forward, addressing the emergency repairs as soon as possible, but really coming up with a complete conditions assessment to inform them about how to do a full restoration. Any other
Thank you.
questions, Ms. Anderson?
I thank you so much. This is kind of a difficult problem, but it's such a beautiful, important church. It's definitely worth the time and investment. Thank you.
We found there are a number of interior artistic elements here as well that are so worth keeping. All of the pews, the panels that make up the movable partitions for the plan were original. And then the church is, all of the windows are Lamb Studio stained glass. And I mean every window throughout the building except for the basement. It's the only church in Cleveland that has this amount of Lamb Studio stained glass. There's a couple, one at Plymouth, and a couple windows in storage with Whitney stained glass that have come out of other buildings that have come down. And so I think there are so many artistic elements here that it's really important that the church take this comprehensive look at how to maintain what it has, but do the full restoration, because there's just so much here worth keeping.
Agree. It's beautiful. Ms. Bailey, questions or comments?
No, I just want to make a comment, commending moving forward with making this a national historic register of this beautiful building. And I'm glad to hear that there's some work is being done right now to this building. So that's my comment. Just glad to hear that it's moving forward to the next level to get more recognition on the building. Thank you.
So Ms. Bailey, did you make a motion part of that, or you're saying you will?
Oh no, I haven't made a motion. I was just making a comment.
Oh, okay.
But I can make one if you're ready.
Well, your recommendation for that statement, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't overstepping something. Well, let's see if there's any other questions or comments. If not, I will take that motion.
Now, just want to make sure I'm making this motion right. The motion is to recommend this project, the building, toward the National Historic Registration. That's my motion.
So your motion
as a recommendation.
To nominate, recommendation to nominate this for the National Register.
Okay, the nomination, oh, okay, to nominate this building as for the registration. All right, thank you.
Thank you for that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? No? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Santora,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland.
Mr. Strickland had mentioned he had to leave at 11:30.
Yes. Thank you. I forgot that. Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. We look forward to this, wonderful building continuing on in the process.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes our National Register nominations. Administrative reports. Do we have any today?
I just have a couple things. It's United Way time again, and I'm still have to figure out how we're going to do that this year. It's an online process, but I will get the forms to the commission as soon as I can if anyone's interested in contributing. We have 4 more meetings in 2021. One of which is an in-person meeting regarding the final approval for the Sherwin-Williams project. And I will be getting you out the 2022 meeting schedule very shortly. Wanted the commission to know that City Council has given you all a raise. It's actually for all the boards and commissions. It's still not clear if it's an immediate raise or if it's when your terms are renewed, but we will clarify that and let you know. But congratulations on that. We have several projects coming up in the near future that are going to require site visits, and we'll get back to you about those and getting those scheduled. And I think that's all I have at the moment.
Excellent. I think you already sent us the schedule too. I think you sent that like 2 weeks ago, I believe. Did others remember that, receiving that also? I believe I filed it, so I'd have to go into my file to.
I can't remember myself, so if I haven't, I will send it, and if I have, I won't.
Okay.
I have not seen that yet in my email, so another email doesn't hurt, I guess.
Maybe I just received it. So, why don't you
Because you're
resend
special.
it then?
As far as I know, we're still virtual for the near future, but we have booked room 514 for the entire year if things change.
Excellent. Mr. Brunges, you had some comments?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There seemed to be some confusion this morning about people having received the invitation for the meeting. I sent both October meeting minutes on the same day back earlier, since now I am in charge of creating those minutes so we don't have to worry about switching hosts and confusion that way. It is going to be I want to get these done earlier than later, so I'm probably going to be sending out the next 3 meetings all very close together just to put them on the schedule so you can at least put them as a holder on your schedule. So be prepared for that you'll get them probably boom, boom, boom. I'm going to try and send out the first quarter of meetings, or I'll try and send the meetings out a quarter at a time in the new year, just so that it is scheduled and ready to go. Just be prepared to see them, because I know that's a change from how we've been doing it. So I understand why there was confusion this time. It's just, I'd like to get things done ahead of time so I don't have to worry about it later. And then I just have, because everybody who gets invited to all these meetings is the same. And it just changes who the participants are. Then I can update that as that gets closer. So that's how I'm handling that forward.
Because you put a unique access code for each invite, correct?
Each meeting will have its own invite code, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks for that update, and reminder to look for our invites, because I know it did come through last time. I remember clicking confirm to both of them, so it just hits your schedule a little bit quicker. So I personally appreciate you sending out the invites earlier so that we make sure the right hold is on each day. Any other feedback, questions, comments from anyone else on the commission? No? All right. Well, then we are adjourned. Thank you for an easy meeting agenda there, Don and Carl. I think that was one of our quicker meetings with having 6 things on there and having multiple things to focus on. So I hope everyone has a great week, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
All right,
Good.
take care.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
See you, everyone.
Bye.